I'm saying it's going to get worse for Starmer. Resign, man. But I don't want to let Starmer off the hook. Starmer thinks he's above the law and he's treating us all like fools. I think this gets to a very dark place about what happened on Epstein Island. One of his ranches in New Mexico is being investigated because there are reports that bodies are buried there. No wonder Starmer stayed out the way. No wonder it dropped after PMQs. Starmer's Britain is lawless Britain, and it is also now two-tier Britain. Labour still hasn't done its rape gang inquiry, predominantly done by Pakistani Muslim men. Is this why we're not doing that now? Because we're going to have this two-tier system, and we're not going to look into that. Now, this is scary.
I'm here with the Westminster Whisperer, Esther McVey. Tell us about the week in politics.
What an explosive week it has been as the first tranche of those Mandelson Files landed, which reveals that Starmer did know all these facts about Mandelson, and it blows a hole in his explanation that he didn't know anything. And I believe he should now resign, because people are saying if he's ignoring that information from his advisors to make his own decision, what else is he ignoring? Has he now become a security risk to the country? Well, we'll be talking about that a little bit later on. Also, what happened this week, you can see Starmer's Britain is lawless Britain, and it is also now two-tier Britain, because what unfolded this week is what you saw Tony Blair did when he was in office, and that was dismantling basically our infrastructures and our systems to remove accountability and democracy. Starmer is doing the same to the justice system. He is unravelling it and obviously trying to get rid of trial by juries now for certain trials. And again, he's brought in the Islamophobia definition, and we're going to see two-tier Britain, which Keir always wanted. So we'll be talking about that. And finally, Rachel Reeves might have started wearing glasses this week, but she's still short-sighted when it comes to finances. And the woman should be baby drilling in the North Sea to get us out of our economic woes. She's not, but she did finally admit this week in the Select Committee that all her taxes that she's put on business is having a devastating impact on the economy and on jobs. Well, there we go. No surprises. But then we've always called her Rachel from accounts.
And on Mandelson, it was the Tory MPs who forced the release of the documents through a humble address.
That's right. We went above, as it were, the Prime Minister and government to the King, where you say you must disclose this information. And what I will say, all sides of the House wanted this information. Starmer tried to sort of procrastinate. A criminal case had started off. The Met Police were involved. He didn't want to do it. But we got some of those 147 pages yesterday. And I will say, Alex Burkhardt, who's the Shadow Chancellor of the Duchess of Lancaster, put it very succinctly. He said, Starmer claims he was lied to by an inveterate liar, but he was not lied to by the due diligence statements. It was all there in black and white.
And the remarkable thing is, it was released after PMQs, which shows that the Prime Minister dodged scrutiny and was quite cowardly.
Yeah. Yes, it wasn't a surprise, I think, to most of us, because last time Kemi Badenoch had that information before PMQs. She absolutely skewered him. In fact, that was when he was on the ropes and people thought that his backbench MPs wouldn't have been so weak. They would have got rid of him. They would have found a new Prime Minister. They didn't. So he knew this time not to release it before PMQs. In fact, they released it very late, and that was another point that was raised by sort of opposition MPs saying, we're about transparency, but this showed cowardice, and what this government never seems to do is transparency, be open and honest.
And the files that dropped covered initial advice given to Starmer, Mandelson's resignation, investigation into vetting, and questions around Mandelson's payoff. So I think let's get into a bit of that, specifically starting with his business dealings. There was cozying up with China, business interests with Russia, Global Counsel, his lobbying firm that he kept shares in, two resignations. It was a laundry list of reputational risks.
Exactly. So why are you going to believe everything he says above and beyond what was printed in black and white? You're quite right. And some of these were deep-rooted, had gone on for many, many years. People knew that. Mandelson loved power. He loved powerful people. He loved money. And we saw that. The relationship he had with Xi Jinping in China. And again, we keep asking questions. Why this embassy in London? What is going on? Why was he selected? And then when I look at what some of the MPs, because the MPs were brilliant on the floor of the House yesterday, one stood up and said, you know, on the 11th of December, JP Morgan had said that Mandelson had a particularly close relationship with Epstein. So it wasn't you knew afterwards. It wasn't that you didn't know. You were warned. You knew then he was a friend of a convicted paedophile. He was staying in his flat even when he was with prison. And I think it is this sort of relationship with that Starmer somehow thought was okay, that he was friends with a convicted paedophile, because you can't really glean anything other than that. And when I thought it was 9 days before that he knew about this, and I'm thinking, you're having breakfast with your wife and your daughter and what have you at home every day. Your daughter's about 15, same age as some of these girls who were being abused. And I thought, did you not think then? Did that not knock you into some kind of reality? I'm meant to be protecting young girls sitting across my breakfast table. I'm looking at one who would be the same age as the children that Epstein, abusing. And he didn't seem to do that at all. So there were lots of things that were brought up yesterday that made you look deeper into the man.
And one of those things was a comment from Jonathan Powell, who is Starmer's national security advisor. He called the appointment of Mandelson to US ambassador as weirdly rushed. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that is exactly right, because it wasn't just Jonathan Powell who said, it was very quick. You actually had Sir Philip Barton, who is the head civil servant at the Foreign Office, saying that he objected to it. He didn't think it was right at all. So you have to say, well, who then was championing Mandelson? If other people are saying don't do it, who's saying do it? And that's where you saw the former Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, was pushing for it. The former Director of Communications, Matthew Doyle, who was a personal friend, which comes out, was also pushing for it, saying, we'll back him, it's fine. But I don't want to let Starmer off the hook, because he too must have been pushing for it, because they were all friends together. They were friends in a group called Labour Together. Mandelson had not just been a key figure in the Blair and the Brown government. It seems that he was a key figure in this new up-and-coming Starmer party as well. He helped Starmer become leader. He was there helping candidates get selected to become MPs. He was right there at the heart. So that's what you've got to say. But these people are saying it's all very fast. It's all very weird.
And weird when it comes to severance pay as well. So Mandelson got £75,000 of taxpayer money. He wanted more than $500,000. And quite interestingly, Darren Jones, who was Chief Secretary to the Treasury, in one of the documents said the terms of agreement exclude any non-disclosure requirements or other prohibition related to publishing details of the claim.
And that is a document from the tranche that was dropped yesterday. So you've got to say, why was this paid off? Now, you will see that Darren Jones, who was speaking yesterday, the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, also the Chief Secretary to the Prime Minister, was implying in his speech yesterday that there could have been legal proceedings, which sounds to me, Mandelson was sort of threatening, if I don't get this, you've destroyed my reputation. We all agreed I should have the job. I'm trying to think what the conversation Mandelson would be having. Therefore, I had an expectation that I'd be on this much money. Therefore, I want this. So he alludes to that. And I think this actually gets very murky for Starmer, and I'll tell you for why. Lots of people in the House of Commons yesterday were saying, well, bring on that tribunal, because he wouldn't stand a cat in hell's chance. If Mandelson lied, well, he's sort of broken his contract already. He lied at the interview stage. He should never have had the job. So question mark, did he really lie to Starmer, right? Another MP stood up, Dr. Kieran Mullen, and said, yeah, bring it on, let's have a tribunal. Or do you not want one? Because this tissue of lies that the government is saying, that Starmer is saying, would actually be blown apart in a tribunal, because all of this would come to light. And I think that is why they were trying to close it down quickly, trying to give him money quickly, trying not to have any sort of information come to light, because it would expose whether he ever did lie to Starmer. And then another reason that's come out is Mandelson has said, I am going to go clean. You know, I will tell people what went on. Liar he might be, but he's also trying to save his reputation. And we might think Mandelson is a liar, but he might have evidence to show that Starmer is an even bigger liar and not to trust him at all. You know, I'd say Starmer thinks he's above the law, and this now is coming out daily and weekly in the House of Commons. He thinks he's above the law, and he's treating us all like fools.
We should very quickly say that Mandelson does deny all allegations of wrongdoing against him.
Yeah, you're right, and we should say that. But what I will also say, and this was something that seemed to be glossed over yesterday in the House, and I think this gets to a very dark place about what happened on Epstein Island, what happened with Epstein. And this is in the first couple of paragraphs of what Alex Burkhardt said, and I'm saying it's going to get worse for Starmer. Resign, man, because this is getting worse. This was read out on the floor of the House. He said, this awful saga involving Jeremy Epstein continues. I understand that. As this House meets, one of his ranches in New Mexico is being investigated because there are reports that bodies are buried there. This was said yesterday on the House of Commons. That will be, well, don't tell me people aren't now investigating into that. No wonder Starmer stayed out the way. No wonder it dropped after PMQs. But you know what? The great thing is about our free press, even though Starmer has tried to close down that again, people will be going out searching and digging. And it was the press who pointed out a lot of Starmer's failure. It was the FT, it was the Telegraph, it's this paper, it's independent journalists, all who have shown him, you know, not to be truthful and to think he's above the law.
It's extraordinary, and much more to come on this in the coming weeks.
And much more sinister than I think we ever thought. The other thing that really happened this week, and you know what, Steph, sometimes there's so much happening every week, so much happening within the week, you can sort of forget it, you can not see what's going on, and that also is dangerous. And can I say, they used to say, you know, Marxism, keep people in a state of constant confusion, keep them in a state of sort of upheaval, they won't know what's going on. And this is happening with Starmer. Some people even suggest it's sort of how he survived. Something worse each time has come in that's kept him in place. And then you've got Iran, but whatever it is, he keeps in place. But I would say, watch out, everybody. Starmer is dismantling our justice system. And I also say, what an irony that a human rights lawyer is dismantling one of our most fundamental, basic human rights, and that is trial by jury. But let me start with some of the things that people might have missed over the last 19 months that Starmer's been doing. Right, he appoints a prison minister who thinks only a third of people should be in prison. So that's 2/3 coming out. Well, which 2/3? Have we got a say in which 2/3? No. And he's released thousands of people from prison. Right? He's now sending fewer people to prison. They brought the sentences sentencing bill through. So if you were going to be sentenced to less than a year, which is a lot of serious crimes, by the way, you will now not be going to prison. He's allowing the sentencing guidelines to be biased towards who is sentenced. So there's a kind of an excuse, an inbuilt excuse for if you've got a story, oh, well, maybe I was a woman, maybe I was abused, maybe I'm somebody of an ethnic minority background, maybe I don't speak English, whatever it is, you won't be going to prison either. Then there's the reorganisation of the police forces, 43 down to 12 to 15, which means there will be less police on the ground putting criminals away. And then we've got that Islamophobia's definition. So like I said, it was years and years later that we discovered how much harm Tony Blair had done to the country by bringing in all these quangos, ministers no longer accountable, other people, quangocrats, technocrats, ruling the country who we can't get rid of and breeding like Billy-O, right? So we've got that. Starmer is doing the exact same by dispersing criminals onto the street, not locking criminals up and leaving us with a lawless and two-tier Keir Britain.
And this week, in the Commons, MPs voted to allow a bill that would curb jury trials with sentences of less than 3 years. And 10 Labour MPs did vote against the government in this. Aspana Begum being one of them, Richard Bergen, Ian Byrne, Imran Hussain. 32,000 lawyers have also written to the Prime Minister on this, 300 barristers. Labour claims they're doing it to clear the backlog.
Yeah, and again, it's shown to be absolute nonsense. There would not be that many cases going before a jury for them to reduce it. Rubbish. What they need to do is get the courts working 24/7. You've got an example. Liverpool is getting its cases down by making sure it utilises the courts. No, again, there's something much more sinister afoot here. You are going to leave it to just one person to decide whether you should go to prison or not. This is 800 years of our system that says 12 good men and women should stand before you because they can take things into account. There were some magnificent speeches on the floor of the House from all sides saying this is an absolute disgrace. Carl Turner MP, also a barrister on the Labour side, never ever gone against his party, was a chief whip, and he is leading the rebellion. I would see this to be a U-turn by Labour. It has to. So many people, like you said, all those lawyers coming forward saying this is a disgrace. A lot of them Labour voting lawyers as well saying this was a disgrace. But let's look at those numbers that you pointed out.
Because there were a lot of abstentions.
There were abstentions. We thought there'd be 65 rebels, maybe 65 people voting against. They did not. But when you looked at the number of people who voted, only 304 voted for, and that's the government's MPs, of which they have 404 MPs, so there was 100 went missing. Now, I believe and I hear this is what's happening. People aren't voting against Starmer because they're frightened they're going to lose the whip. Should they lose the whip, it means they can't vote in a leadership competition. So there's a kind of a Faustian pact. Those people wanting to be the new Prime Minister, whether that's Angela Rayner, whether it's West Streeting, whether it's Shabina Mahmood, all of them are awful. Ed Miliband, no. Right. They don't want people to vote against because they will lose their backers and they need at least 80 MPs. So that's why nothing is really happening. They're sort of over a barrel, as it were. And like I said, spineless again, letting it drift again, but that is why. So you will see, and last night I think only 296 MPs were there and voting, not the 404. And also they don't want to lose, well, of course they're going to lose these by-elections, but they're not in the House absolutely campaigning on the ground.
And this week there was also a new definition for Islamophobia released.
Now this is scary, and I will say again about Starmer's untruths, not knowing the facts, U-turns, lies, whatever you want to call them. A couple of weeks ago, one of his backbenchers asked him, will we have an Islamophobia definition? And he said, no. About 4 questions later, somebody else asked him, will there be an Islamophobia definition? Yes, of course we will. So that's what the man does. But this is what...
flip-flop, Est.
Flip-flop, Mr. U-turn. And bringing this forward... Right, it is a blasphemy law via the back door. He's also now going to have a czar, a sort of an Islamist sort of czar. And what I want to know, and this is where people say we're going to get a two-tier Keir justice system. So when we can't question people because this goes into their religion. And remember, religion is a belief. It's not a fact. We're not saying racism here because there's already laws against racism and racist behaviour, right? This is about criticising somebody's belief. Now, you're allowed to criticise people's beliefs. You can criticise the political beliefs. You can criticise any beliefs you want, but religion is a belief. Him bringing this forward as a blasphemy law, does that mean we can't question Sharia courts now? Does that mean we can't question halal meat? Remember, I've brought a bill forward asking for the compulsory labelling of halal and kosher meat. Can we not question honour killings now? And is that why Labour still hasn't done its rape gang inquiry, predominantly done by Pakistani Muslim men? Is this why we're not doing that now? Because we're going to have this two-tier system and we're not going to look into that.
And you wrote a letter to Shabana Mahmood that still hasn't had a reply yet.
Yeah, I wrote it along with Rupert Lowe, who's leading the independent rape gang inquiry, with Sammy Woodhouse, who was herself a victim. She'd like to call herself a survivor of rape gangs, and also the barrister Graham Smith. And we wrote this letter, and this is a significant letter that I cannot believe in 2 weeks that the Home Secretary hasn't got back in touch. This was a girl brutally raped over many years who then said, I know 3 people were murdered during these rape gangs. Now, if I was the Home Secretary, I would have us in a shot. I'd have the police in with a shot. At the moment, there are only allegations. It might be wrong, it might be right. But surely, if you're the party of women, if you're the party that goes on and on and on about women's rights, what we're going to do, coercion in the household, sexual abuse, relationships, well, they're not. This party is all talk and absolutely zero action.
And on that, there was an alarming case this week where a woman was allegedly sexually assaulted in a travel lodge after a staff member handed a man a car key to her room. And now dozens of MPs have demanded a meeting with Travel Lodge, but there hasn't been that much fury when it comes to the rape gangs.
Exactly. All of this, to me, and I've noticed this a lot, is distraction tactics with Labour MPs, right? So yes, that is wrong. Yes, that should be a criminal case. Anybody hands over the key, though the bloke did lie to the person on the reception desk, said it's my girlfriend. All wrong. Yes, that should be brought forward and investigated. But those 20 MPs, Labour MPs, would be best served to be pushing their government for a rape gang inquiry, which they are absolutely not, which goes to another key question, and it comes up time and time again, and it's gathering pace again. Starmer, does he have a woman problem? This is the man hasn't done the rape gang inquiry. This is the man who thought it was fine that who he appointed to a top diplomatic position, the ambassador to the United States, had an ongoing friendship with a convicted paedophile. Again, wasn't thinking of the young girls there. He's rude to other MPs, particularly Kemi Badenoch all the time, rude to Liz Saville-Roberts of Plaid. And I'd also say he's rude to Rachel Reeves. There she was crying on the front bench, really didn't care. He seems to give Shabana Mahmood, she talks a lot, but he doesn't seem to back her or endorse her or support her in any way. So has he got a problem with 50% of the population? I'd say yes.
Well, I'm sure many of our viewers would agree.
Mm-hmm. And also, don't forget this week, again, this two-tier. There's a big march was meant to be happening on Sunday,
yes,
right? And the reason I go into, again, he's got this definition out there. This is a march. Well, no longer. It's a gathering now. They're not allowed to march because the Metropolitan Police said, oh my gosh, it's severe risk of harm, danger, criminality on the street. So they wanted it stopped. It seems they haven't got it stopped. It seems now they're going to gather. Oh, give us a break. It's the same thing. I bet you they're going to march to where they're gathering. But anyway, hold that thought, right? And this is for the Iranian regime. This is anti-Israel. This is like a serious sort of, as I said, the police thought it was like severely, hit the level by which it should be banned. But he quickly brought in this Islamophobia definition. And again, if they had have been what he deemed as far right, if this had have been the pink ladies demanding that something was done about the rape gangs, if this had have been people protesting outside where illegal migrants are being housed in their community, frightened for their children, I bet you their march would have been stopped. I bet you they wouldn't have just been able to have done a gathering. I bet we would have felt the full might of the police there. And this is this two-tier. They can do that, but heaven help us if somebody like Lucy Connolly puts a tweet up online in prison, and yet we've got a whole host of people we're not now going to go to prison. I think this is a very dangerous move. And I say to people, please, everybody, wake up. Starmer is dismantling our justice system.
And not only that, but you could argue Rachel Reeves is dismantling the economy.
She's already done that. Steph, she's already done that. I look at her with disbelief. Like I said, she's wearing glasses now, but still short-sighted to her failings and also what could be done to put the economy right. Drill, baby, drill in the North Sea, right? We have under our very feet oil and gas. At the moment, with what's happening in the Middle East and what's happening in Iran, we need security of energy, affordability of energy, and reliability of energy. And we could do all of that if we started drilling in the North Sea. But oh no! We've got zealot Ed Miliband there with his multiple taxes, which is sending our energy prices through the roof and denying us the right to drill, wanting more solar panels. Oh, yeah, let's buy them from China. Wind turbines. Oh, yeah, let's buy them from China. They are ridiculous. They have no financial acumen whatsoever, no sort of economic wisdom, because they would start using and getting our natural resources and pumping that money into the economy, after which she'd bring down taxes.
And Rachel Reeves this week appeared before the Treasury Select Committee to talk about taxes.
Yeah, and she sort of, if you look at it, she did admit that her jobs tax, her increase to national insurance contributions, it was, as she put, a valid sort of argument that was having a depression in employment, that unemployment had gone up. Well, no surprise, because we know when you tax something, you get less of it. People put taxes on cigarettes, so people smoke less. They put taxes on alcohol, so you drink less. They put taxes on gambling, so you gamble less. So when you put taxes on jobs, you know what? You're going to get less jobs. But she said, and this was her defence, she was paying more into the black hole that is the NHS. And she thought it was worth sacrificing people's jobs to put more money into the NHS. And that tells you all you need to know about what the Labour Party think about the public. The Labour Party is dogmatic. It is not pragmatic, and it is ruining us all and pushing the population into poverty.
Sacrificing hundreds of thousands of more people with unemployment as, I think, 1.9 million.
Yeah, and the bill's going up. It'll go up by another 70 billion. So what I'm saying is, drill, baby, drill. Get some money there, bring down people's cost base. Fundamentally, it is the energy cost base, by which then you'd have money in your coffers, by which you could reduce taxes, by which people would say, I've got confidence again, my business is better again, I'm not paying lots of bills again, fundamentally to the government. I can employ people, because the people who are suffering the most are our youth. We've now got youth unemployment higher than Europe, unheard of, because people are saying, I can't take that risk. And also down to Angela Rayner's, day one rights for everybody. People are saying we're frightened to take on somebody.
It's
the economics of the madhouse.
The economics of the madhouse. What a note to end on, Esther. Thank you so much for watching the Daily Expresso. Please do like, share and subscribe.
And don't forget hype.
And the hype button. We'll see you again tomorrow.